the African History Network and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. It's Friday, October 29th, 2021, and we're live. Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. So when I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered today as a panelist, one of the topics we discussed was an article that I posted on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, on Thursday. The NAACP, National Chapter of the NAACP, calls on athletes not to sign with Texas teams over voting, abortion laws, but also coronavirus mask mandates or lack of coronavirus mask mandates. We're going to talk about this because there was strong. It was a 2-page letter that the NAACP issued, and they gave it to ABC News. Picked up this 2-page letter. The NAACP took jabs at state lawmakers in Texas, calling the state a blueprint by legislators to violate constitutional rights for all, especially for women, children, and marginalized communities. All right. Now, one of the things that I brought up today is that corporations who were speaking out back during the summer 2021, against voter restriction bills and things like this. We remember Major League Baseball canceled they moved the All-Star game from Atlanta, Georgia, because of the Georgia SB 202, I think it was, the Georgia voter restriction bill. They moved the Major League Baseball All-Star game. And the NAACP is calling on members of the NBA, WNBA, NFL, NHL, National Hockey League, and Major League Baseball to consider not signing with teams in Texas as a protest against several controversial laws. So we'll discuss this. This is geared toward athletes, encouraging athletes, free agents, not to sign with Texas teams in these various sports, in these various leagues. So we'll discuss this and a direction this really needs to go, and it hasn't gone yet. I talked about that today on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And then in the second part of the show, we've been talking about the documentary that aired on MSNBC on Sunday, October 24th, called Civil War, The Roots of Our Division. And we've been dealing with different aspects of the documentary and talking about different aspects of Civil War and Reconstruction, which was 1865 to 1877. So yesterday we dealt with dispelling myths about the Civil War. And did the South secede from the Union because of states' rights, which was not true. They seceded from the Union to maintain slavery. Today, we're going to deal with most white Southerners did not own slaves, so why would they secede from the Union? Most white Southerners did not own slaves, so why would they secede from the Union? Because when we deal with this period of history, and also we talk about repairing the damage from a legacy of slavery, Jim Crow segregation, redlining, etc., the argument that's always made is, well, my parents didn't own, my great-grandparents or my family never owned slaves, etc. All right. Now, they don't make that argument when you deal with things like issues regarding Native Americans or other marginalized groups. Okay, they don't make that argument as well. When it came to Filipino Americans and in the 2010, it was the 2000. I think it was about 2010. big stimulus package that went out in 2010. There was almost $200 million in that stimulus package going to Filipino Americans because of agreement between the U.S. and the Philippines going back to World War II. All right, so we're going to discuss this because this is one of the issues that comes up during discussions about the Civil War. Most white Southerners did not own slaves, so why would they secede from the Union? All right, and then also we'll talk about the class I teach on Saturdays, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Now, on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora around the world, because right now it's correct your own behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And you can register for the 10-week online course that I teach on Saturdays, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. We do that 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can register for that also at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, right on the homepage. Okay, so I want to jump into this first story here. And ABC News has a good piece on this. And we're going to go to clip one here in just a minute, Ed. NAACP calls on athletes not to sign with Texas teams over voting and abortion bills, but also because of lack of coronavirus mask mandates as well. That's another issue. Lack of coronavirus mask mandates. All right, now, the NAACP on Thursday, October 28th, called on members of the NBA, WNBA, NFL, NHL, and Major League Baseball, MLB, to consider not signing with teams in Texas as a protest against several controversial laws passed recently in the state. As a protest against several controversial laws passed recently in the state of Texas. In the 2-page letter given first to ABC News, the NAACP took jabs at state lawmakers, calling the state of Texas a blueprint by legislators to violate constitutional rights for all, especially for women, children, and marginalized communities. A blueprint by legislators to violate constitutional rights for all, especially for women, children, and marginalized communities. Now, the NAACP noted the state's controversial laws on abortion, voting rights, and coronavirus mask mandates as reasons for agents not to sign with Texas teams. Okay. Now, in this 2-page letter, the NAACP said, as we watch an incomprehensible assault on basic human rights unfold in Texas, we are simultaneously witnessing a threat to constitutional guarantees for women, children, and marginalized communities. NAACP National President Derek Johnson and NAACP Texas State Conference President Gary Bledsoe wrote this in the 2-page letter. They went on to say, quote, over the past few months, legislators in Texas have passed archaic policies disguised as laws that directly violate privacy rights and a woman's freedom to choose, restrict access to free and fair elections for Black and brown voters, and increase the risk of contracting coronavirus, end quote. Now, I want to go to this piece here from, we're going to go to this clip here from KHOU Channel 11 out of Houston, Texas. And they have a segment here dealing with the NAACP calls on athletes not to sign with Texas teams over voting abortion laws. Let's go to this clip, Ed.
The largest civil rights organization is urging athletes who are considering Texas to take their talents elsewhere.
They want to make sure that they're not buying property, spending money, using that influence to build a state or to build a city that is adverse to people who look like themselves.
Dr. James Dixon is the president of the NAACP's Houston chapter. On Thursday, the organization issued an open letter to players' associations for the NBA, NFL, MLB, WNBA, and NHL, imploring free agents to reconsider signing contracts in Texas in response to the state's abortion and more restrictive voting laws and the ban on mask mandates. The NAACP says, quote, Texas isn't safe for anyone.
Based on the continuous evidences of racially motivated public policy.
The letter comes at the doorstep of the Supreme Court hearing arguments in cases challenging the state's controversial abortion law, and on the heels of athletes increasingly speaking out on social justice issues.
Lifting the message of justice into the public arena, the public square, beyond sports.
In a statement to KHOU on Friday, Governor Abbott's office responded to the letter, saying in part, throughout his time in office, Governor Abbott has worked to protect and defend the rights of Texans, including the right to work. Dixon says athletes have the ability to use their platforms to appeal to diverse demographics and foster change.
Athletes really motivate and galvanize people.
So far, Dixon says there haven't been any athletes who said they'll reconsider.
Okay.
But he believes over time they'll come forward.
Okay, so the last part, the reporter's mic dropped out. So far, Dr. James Dixon has said that no athletes have come forward, but he thinks over time they will. Okay, that's from KHOU Channel 11 out of Houston, Texas. So if we go, I want to go back here and look at part of this letter that this 2-page letter that the NAACP submitted. If we go back and look at this here, and just a second, let me flip back over. All right. The letter goes on to say, if you are a woman, avoid Texas. If you are Black, avoid Texas. If you want to lower your chances of dying from coronavirus, avoid Texas. So they're making a clear stance here, trying to put pressure on Texas, and that's good. It's just not enough pressure. Because this is different than what happened in 2015 with the transgender bathroom bills, when corporations were tripping over themselves to come out and denounce the transgender bathroom bills in the state of Indiana. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Now, Texas bill SB 8, the strictest anti-abortion law in the country, has caused protests nationwide and a current legal fight between the state of Texas and the Department of Justice. The law bans abortions after a so-called fetal heartbeat is detected, which is about 6 weeks into a pregnancy, and often before a woman knows that she is pregnant. Now, Republicans in the state also spent months trying to overhaul the voting system in the state of Texas, even though Democrats say the new rules will make it harder for minority voters to take part in elections, although there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud in Texas following the 2020 elections. Republicans are still going with Donald Trump's big lie. Now, Republicans claim they are seeking to restore voter confidence in the state's elections, but you eroded voter confidence with the lies that you repeated from Donald Trump because you were cowards. So they're trying to restore something, and they're the ones who really created the problem with the lies that they kept telling about stolen elections and the big lie and voter fraud, but couldn't provide any evidence of widespread voter fraud to substantiate their argument. Now, Governor Greg Abbott, the only politician who was mentioned by name in the NAACP's letter, has also been a vociferous opponent of mask and vaccine mandates to fight COVID-19. He also caught COVID-19 as well. So that's poetic justice. Now, there are 9 Texas teams playing. There are 9 Texas teams playing the leagues mentioned by the NAACP. The NBA's Dallas Mavericks, San Antonio Spurs, and Houston Rockets for the NBA. National Hockey League's Dallas Stars, WNBA's Dallas Wings, Major League Baseball's Texas Rangers and Houston Astros, and the NFL's Houston Texans and Dallas Cowboys. Now, with the NHL, NFL, and NBA seasons less than halfway over, the leagues won't welcome free agency until well into the year 2022, next year. Now, Major League Baseball free agency begins 5 days after the end of the World Series, where the Astros are currently playing. The Houston Astros currently in the World Series. Now, the letter comes just a few months after Major League Baseball took a stand against Georgia's voting overhaul, the Georgia's voter restriction bill, this past baseball season, when it moved the All-Star game out of Atlanta in protest. Now, the NAACP is calling on athletes to, quote, seek employment with sports teams located in states that will protect, honor, and serve your families with integrity. We're going to continue this on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. Stand by. Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. Back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by. All right, how's everybody doing? Who still needs to register for my class on Saturdays? From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement of Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Who still needs to register for that class? We'll post a link here. It's a 10-week online class, and we deal with history leading up to. We look at from the end of the Civil War through Reconstruction, through Jim Crow era, Great Migration, World War I, World War II, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement. To look and see what happened to us after slavery ended, and what were the laws and policies put in place to bring us to where we are now, so we understand where we need to go from here.
Much more. Unfortunately, many people confuse what racism is. Racism is a power structure. It was laws and policies that put us in this predicament. It's going to be laws and policies that take us out. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the compass of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know.
We have it all on 910 AM Superstation.
910 AM Superstation has the greatest advertising deal ever with our Godfather package. 200 spots for $500 with a must-air within 30-day policy. That is only $2.50 per spot, and we will even produce the spots free. That's right, free. Call Bronisha Williams now at 313-434-8291.
WADL gets.
Stand by. Back from break. Stand by. Back from break in 2 minutes.
The Superstation, Detroit's only African-American talk radio.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Friday, October 29th, 2021, and we are live. Calling numbers 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600. Here's the calling number if you have a question or comment. Okay, I want to go to this clip here. We're going to go to clip 2. Ed, I want to go to this clip here. I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered today as a panelist. I'm usually a panelist on each Friday. And this was one of the topics that we discussed today. Now, we also heard from Melanie Campbell of Black Women's Roundtable. I think she's still with Black Women's Roundtable. But on Thursday, and those that listen to Reverend Al Sharpton here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF, you talked about this on Thursday's show. Leading civil rights leaders met with Senator Joe Manchin on Thursday, October 28th. And they met with him over getting the Freedom to Vote Act passed, John Lewis Voting Rights Act, breaking the filibuster, etc. The leaders of the nation's top historic civil rights organizations released a joint readout of their meeting with Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, and they said, citing the deteriorating crisis of democracy that continues to overtake the country, national civil rights leaders implored Senator Manchin, to commit to the protection of voting rights using every means at the Senate's disposal, including overriding the filibuster. All right. Now, probably on Sunday's show, we'll share with you the segment with Melanie Campbell. But I want to go to this piece here. This is we discussed the NAACP on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go to this clip, Ed.
In Texas, where Derek Johnson, head of the NAACP, is calling on professional athletes not to sign with any Texas teams as a result of the policies being put in place by Republicans in that state, including a voter suppression bill. This was a letter that he released publicly. It says, "I write to you today in an attempt to appeal not only to your influential platforms as highly regarded athletes, but to your respective purposes as parents and role models for both our children and those in your personal lives. From abortion to voting rights and mask mandates, Texas has become a blueprint by legislators to violate constitutional rights for all, especially for women, children, and marginalized communities. As we watch an incomprehensible assault on basic human rights unfold in Texas, we are simultaneously witnessing a threat to constitutional guarantees for women, children, and marginalized communities. Over the past few months, legislators in Texas have passed archaic policies disguised as laws that directly violate privacy rights and a woman's freedom to choose, restrict access to free and fair elections for Black and brown voters, and increase the risk of contracting coronavirus. If you are a woman, avoid Texas. If you are Black, avoid Texas. If you want to lower your chances of dying from coronavirus, avoid Texas. We're now pleading with you. If you are a free agent and are considering employment in Texas, look elsewhere. The Texas government will not protect your family. Demand that Texas owners invest in your rights and protect your investments. Texas is not safe for you, your spouse, or your children. Until the legislation is overturned, Texas isn't safe for anyone. Teams mentioned include the Houston Astros and Texas Rangers in Major League Baseball, the Houston Texans and Dallas Cowboys in the NFL, the Houston Rockets, Dallas Mavericks, San Antonio Spurs of the NBA, Dallas Stars of the NHL, and the Dallas Wings in the WNBA. Cleo, what do you make of this letter from Derek Johnson trying to appeal to professional athletes not to sign with Texas teams?
Pretty powerful. I mean, he broke it all down. He made it real clear that people should think about what they do and look at the consequences of being in Texas. I didn't realize that being in Texas was that dangerous. Are you in danger?
Am I in danger? No, I'm not in danger, but I do have a significant problem. But I do have a significant problem with what's happening in the state capitol there. And I get Derek's point in terms of the free agents. But here's what I want to know: will the NAACP directly challenge those teams? Will Derek call on the Texas State Conference and their chapters to launch massive protests in front of the offices of every single one of those professional teams? Are they going to demand that the owners say something and do something? And so I get the whole deal with the agents, but I want to know, is he going to deploy the NAACP and their branches to initiate, again, massive protests all across the state, in Austin, in Houston, in Dallas, in San Antonio?
When was the last time they've done something like that?
Has it ever happened?
Don't know. Yeah, it has happened in terms of simultaneous protest. But again, a letter is one thing to the agents, but to me, there should be mass mobilization, specifically targeting the teams and targeting the owners, demanding that they use their power and influence on the folks in Austin.
Take your videos to the next level. Go to Motion.
Okay.
And I agree.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry?
Kelly, go ahead. Kelly, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, it was delayed. No, I agree with you, Roland, in that when I read the letter, although I applaud NAACP for taking initiative and pushing that forward, it did have like a little bit of hint of victim blaming to me because of what you just said. It's not necessarily the free agent's fault that these laws are in place, but the people who are actually empowered to do something about it substantially are the owners. They are the general managers and the like. So, like you said, unless NAACP is going to them regarding this matter and pushing that they lobby on behalf of who they represent, more or less, by way of being a sports team, I don't see how it would be much of an impact if the free agents do it.
And in fact, Michael, if you look at all of those teams, stadiums that were built for them, taxpayer dollars. And so, again, I would say put that pressure as well. I got no problem with the letter, but what I want to see, I want to see Derek Johnson instruct the Texas State Conference of the NAACP, instruct all of the chapters in that state to undergo a massive protest in front of every single. Here's the deal right now, okay? My Houston Astros are playing the Atlanta Braves. Game 3 is tonight. The next 2 games are in Atlanta, okay? If the Astros win one of those games, it's coming back to Houston. This is the deal, Derek. Have massive protests outside of Minute Maid Park where the Astros play. In fact, we know about the Georgia bill, where the NAACP protests going on tonight in front of the Braves Stadium in Cobb County, games 3, 4, and 5. Why aren't they passing out leaflets to all the fans who are coming there? You got Trump, who's coming to the game tonight, to the game tomorrow night there in Atlanta. How about that? Also, you've got basketball season starting. Here's the deal. Have the NAACP launch protests at every home game of the Dallas Mavericks, Houston Rockets, San Antonio Spurs. That, to me, is how you mobilize and organize and really expand the attention and not just talk about free agents, because here's the deal. A free agent ain't signing with any one of those teams until the season is over.
Yeah, that's part of it, Roland. But see, where I stand, we should be talking about not watching the games in the first place. Where I stand, we should be going after the advertisers that advertise on the networks, that advertise on the networks during the games. You leverage your economics to enforce your political agenda. So protesting in front of the stadium, that's good. But
See, we have more power than we're using. We can strangle. Yeah, I was about to cuss on your head.
No. But here's my whole deal. Here's the deal, though. No, but Michael, here's the deal, though. You can't again, understanding how you build attention for the protest. You can't do that until you mobilize and organize. And so imagine if you have people who are signing people up who are at the games. Right. That is one of the ways you actually do it. I'm just, again, I appreciate the letter from Derek, and I appreciate that. I want to know, okay, NAACP, what's the next step? That's the point you asked as well. So, what's next?
Well, it's a process. I totally understand it's a process leading up to economic withdrawal strategies, things like this. But with the NAACP, they don't get to that point. They don't get to that step. Okay, so we have to understand this long range and really understand how to bring it to fruition what it is we say that we want and really leverage our economics to do this. The protests in front of the stadiums are good, but then you got to go to the corporate. You can put economic pressure on the corporations that run ads on the networks while the games are playing. Where are you? Why are you silent? Where do you stand on this? Many people in the Republicans in the state legislature, okay, who voted for SB 8, the strict anti-abortion bill, and voted for the voter restriction bill in Texas, okay? Which corporations help finance them? We should be kicked. That's part of the process to leverage the economics and put pressure on these corporations. That's not taking place here. So sometimes we confuse activity with productivity. Sometimes we confuse activity with productivity, brother. And it's like, look, either you're going to kick their asses or you're going to get your ass kicked. This is all there is to it.
All right, pause right there.
Corporations are already working on.
Okay, pause right there. Hey, go ahead and let that play. That's Dr. Cleo Monago. Go ahead and let that part play, Ed. If you still have it queued up there. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So I can.
No, Cleo, go ahead.
I was just going to simply say that the corporations. I'm getting back to the paralysis in the behavioral brainwashing issue. The corporations, through their media, are constantly creating messages that keep Black people from going to these steps that you all are talking about, and keep Black people from being apprehensive to behave in ways that mean we mean business. So it's time to start protesting corporations before all of this stuff occurs. We need to protest how Black people are depicted and how Black people are made to not even love themselves and value other people, see other people as more important than a Black person as a choice. These are all things that are getting in the way of Black people acting out on a holistic basis on multiple levels, like the LGBT.
Pause right there. All right, thanks. And we'll play some more of that on Sunday's show, because that segment was a continuation from the first segment of Roland Show today, where we talked about the civil rights organizations meeting with Senator Joe Manchin on Thursday, and we spoke with Melanie Campbell, president of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation in the Black Women's Roundtable. Okay, and I love Melanie Campbell, but Melanie didn't talk about putting pressure on corporations and economic withdrawal strategies and things like this. And you have some people say, oh, well, more pressure needs to be put on President Joe Biden. Congress is a co-equal branch of government. Going back to I'm a bill on Capitol Hill, Schoolhouse Rock. Yeah, you could put pressure on Biden. Now, Biden has already said, even before this town hall with CNN that he just did, go back about 3 or 4 months ago when he did the town hall with Don Lemon, he said he supports going back to a standing filibuster, which would put the onus on the minority as opposed to just being able to call in from the country club and tell the Senate Majority Leader you want to filibuster a bill. So you're going to and even we've seen Senator Angus King this past week. He was on, I think, the Rachel Maddow show. Senator Angus King, independent from Maine, who has changed his stance on the filibuster and says he supports changing the filibuster rules back to a standing filibuster also. And he said he thinks that Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin would go for that, because that was what the rules were previously on the filibuster. Okay. But there have been 161 carve-outs to the filibuster in the past 50 years. Filibuster was created in 1917. It's a Senate rule. It's not in the U.S. Constitution. But you're going to see more movement, I think, on the filibuster once they get the infrastructure bill and the spending plan, the human infrastructure bill. Once they get those two passed, I think you're going to see changes to the filibuster take place. All right, we'll talk about that a little bit more on Sunday's show. But just very quickly here, when we spoke with Melanie Campbell, I brought up how corporations have gone silent. Corporations that were speaking out just a few months ago, like in April. So, for instance, if we look at this article here from NBC News, and we talked about this here on this show, because all this gossip and this nonsense we don't deal with here on the show. We deal like with real substance. Back in April 2021, corporations were speaking out over voter restriction bills coming out of Texas. This is an article here from NBC News. Hundreds of CEOs, celebrities, corporations joined forces to oppose discriminatory voting legislation. In addition to big companies and their leaders, the statement's signatories include major law firms and nonprofits. Well, these corporations have largely come down with a severe case of laryngitis and amnesia because they're silent. Dozens of companies, including Amazon, Google, Starbucks, and Netflix, joined hundreds of business leaders, celebrities, law firms, and nonprofits to sign a new statement opposing any discriminatory legislation that would restrict ballot access. The statement appearing Wednesday, this is back in April 2021, the statement appearing Wednesday as advertisement in the New York Times and the Washington Post is the latest and largest mobilization by corporate America against restrictive voting legislation advanced by Republicans around the country. But they've gone silent. I don't know if they're still on summer vacation or what. Quote, "We stand for democracy." The statement stressed across 2 full pages. We all should feel a responsibility to defend the right to vote and to oppose any discriminatory legislation or measures that restrict or prevent, let's blow this up even more, that restrict or prevent any eligible voter from having an equal and fair opportunity to cast a ballot, end quote. In addition to companies and their leaders, the statement's signatories include celebrities, major law firms, and nonprofits, the New York Times first reported. So this has largely gone silent now. Now you have some celebrities protesting the abortion bill. There's a commercial now with John Legend talking about the right to vote, things like this. But it's pretty tame. Target, Bank of America, Apple, Cisco, Berkshire Partners, American Express, and Wells Fargo were among dozens of other corporations that signed on, while George Clooney, Paul Abdul, Michael Bloomberg, Mark Ruffalo, Demi Lovato, Brian Cornell, chair and CEO of Target, and Warren Buffett were among hundreds of individuals. Blah, blah, blah. It goes on, goes on, goes on. Okay, so they've come down with a severe case of laryngitis and amnesia, possibly arthritis, because they're not tweeting about it for the most part either. Then you look at this one here that we talked about here on the show also. This piece from, let's see, there was one from New York Times that dealt with Black executives call on corporations to fight restrictive voting laws. We talked about this when this letter came out and the articles came out, and it was good. In the first segment where we spoke with Melanie Campbell, Roland brought this up. Ken Chenault, who's the former CEO of American Express. I'm not sure how many people know the former CEO of American Express for years was African American. And Kenneth Frazier, who's current CEO of Merck Pharmaceuticals, organized a letter signed by 72 African American business leaders. This is a piece here from New York Times back in March 31st, 2021, updated April 3rd, 2021. Black executives call on corporations to fight restrictive voting laws. Now, this was good, didn't go far enough. I'm not sure if they're still on vacation, but this has largely gone silent. Dozens responded after companies in Georgia said little against state legislation that put strict rules in place. So I compared this today on the show, and some of you all saw it. We'll talk about it more Sunday. But I compared the silence, largely the silence from corporations regarding the voter restriction bills. I compare that to what happened in the state of Indiana in 2015 regarding the Indiana Religious Freedom Act, which was also known as the transgender bathroom bill. Because when that hit in around March 2015, corporations were tripping over themselves to put statements out denouncing the transgender bathroom bill. And Mike Pence, who went on to become vice president, Trump's vice president, he was governor of Indiana at the time. Now, this is an article here from, because I have all this stuff in my archives. I reported on all this when it took place. This is from CNN.com, Indiana Religious Freedom Restoration Act, what you need to know. This is from March 31st, 2015. Corporations were very vocal, and they were threatening to cancel conferences, cancel projects in the state of Indiana. Governor Mike Pence unleashed a firestorm on Indiana last week when he signed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Critics of the law contend it could be used by individuals and businesses to discriminate, particularly against the LGBT community on the basis of religion. The ramifications for the Hoosier state are just starting to be felt in the form of boycotts, petitions, and travel bans. As the controversy mushrooms, okay, so they go on and talk about the bill and some background information. Okay, but if we look at this here, the backlash is immediate. The backlash is immediate. Civil liberties and gay rights groups hold to their stance that the law could be used by businesses to deny service to people based on their sexual orientation, etc. Okay, so if we go back, boycott begins from sports teams to musicians to other cities and states. They fell like dominoes. The NCAA, which is headquartered in Indianapolis and set to host its men's basketball Final Four in the city this week, March 2015. The NCAA said the law could leave it to move events elsewhere in future years. The NBA, WNBA, and NFL issued critical statements too. Indianapolis Colts owner Jim Irsay says fans of all stripes are welcome. A petition posted on change.org hopes to get the Big Ten Conference to move its football championship out of Indianapolis. Let's see here. So there was massive protests behind this. The mayors of San Francisco and Seattle have barred spending on travel to the state of Indiana. Now, this This is behind transgender people and people in the LGBT community, especially transgender, being able to use the bathroom of their choice. This was the response from corporate America. The mayors of San Francisco and Seattle have barred spending on travel to the state of Indiana. The governors of Connecticut and the state of Washington did the same thing. And you could add Wilco to the boycott bandwagon. The group is canceling its May 7th show in Indianapolis, it says on Facebook. The Indiana Religious Freedom Restoration Act feels like thinly disguised legal discrimination, Wilco says. Quote, hope to get back to the Hoosier state someday soon when this odious measure is repealed. End quote. Cher used to be with Sonny and Cher, you know, if I could turn back time. Cher is among the artists speaking out. Her, well, I guess it's her now, Chaz Bono. Chaz Bono is a transgender man. Used to be a woman, now it's a man, Chaz Bono, if you don't follow that. So Cher spoke out as well. So when you go look at this, corporations came out. Salesforce.org, Salesforce.com, Amazon, all of them were sending out strong statements, and some threatening to cancel projects and withdraw economic support, things like this. Then we look at this one here from HuffingtonPost.com. Gen Con threatens to take popular convention and millions of dollars out of Indiana over religious freedom bill. This is from March 25th, 2015. So this is about a week before the article from CNN. Organizers of Gen Con said to be the largest gaming convention in the U.S. Okay, video games. Okay, not slot machines. Organizers of Gen Con said to be the largest gaming convention in the U.S. have threatened to take their event and potentially millions of dollars out of Indiana if Governor Mike Pence, Republican, signs a controversial religious freedom bill into law. This is even before the bill was signed into law that threatened economic withdrawal strategies. Senate Bill 101 will prohibit state and local governments from substantially burdening someone's religious beliefs unless that entity can prove it's relying on the least restrictive means possible to further a compelling governmental interest, in quote, MSNBC reports. Okay, but go check this out. So we see a different strategy implemented when it came to the LGBT community. And the state of Indiana ended up changing the law after about a week because they got so much economic pressure. There was one conference that was canceled. It was I think they moved it out of Indiana and held it somewhere else. Okay. They got so much pressure from all different sides that they changed the bill after about a week. So my question is, okay, so why a corporation, some of these same corporations, why do you have a different stance when it comes to voting rights that also are not just a 15th Amendment issue? In 15th Amendment 1870 guaranteed the right to vote to African American men, but it's also a 19th Amendment issue because of the 19th Amendment of 1920 that guaranteed the right to vote to white women. Women, generally speaking, especially white women. It's a 26th Amendment issue, which impacts college students because it was the 26th Amendment of 1971 that lowered the minimum voting age from 21 to 18, which impacts a lot of college students, African-American college students, white college students, Latino. So this is why I'm saying, wait a second, hold on. We need to take a different approach to this. You know, we have to put economic pressure on these corporations because the way they're going, they're still going to have this. I mean, you're not attacking pressure points. Well, we'll talk about this more on Sunday's show. All right, now I want to get to this second topic here quickly. All this week we've been talking about the documentary on MSNBC that aired Sunday, October 24th. Civil War, the roots of our division. Civil War, the roots of our division. And we've been dispelling myths also about the Civil War, Reconstruction, things like that. So go back and watch these shows. They're at our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. There's a good article from Washington Post by Dr. James Lowen, and Dr. James Lowen wrote the book, Myths My Teacher Told Me, Myths My Teacher Told Me. And Dr. James Lowen just passed away a few months ago also. He wrote this book here, Lies My Teacher Told Me, I should say, Lies My Teacher Told Me. Is subtitled Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong. Lies My Teacher Told Me. Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong. And he was actually on an episode of News One Now with Roland Martin, dealing with the Civil War and things like that. I think Dr. Greg Carr was on that same episode. But if we look at this piece here from the Washington Post, 5 myths about why the South seceded. 5 myths about why the South seceded from the Union. And if we go to myth number 3, that's today's topic. Most white Southerners did not own slaves, so they would not secede from the Union. Most white Southerners did not own slaves, so they would not secede from the Union. This is a myth. It's true most white Southerners did not own slaves, okay? But there are 2 main reasons why white people who didn't own slaves would secede from the Union and want to keep slavery in place. 2 main reasons. Now, most white Southern families had no slaves, that's true. Less than half of white Mississippi households owned 1 or more slaves. Less than half of white Mississippi households owned 1 or more slaves. For example, and that proportion was smaller still in whiter states such as Virginia and Tennessee. It is also true that in areas with few slaves, most white Southerners did not support secession. It is also true in areas with few slaves, most white Southerners did not support secession, meaning leaving the Union. Now, West Virginia seceded from Virginia, okay, because Virginia splits, okay? West Virginia seceded from the state of Virginia to stay with the Union, and Confederate troops had to occupy parts of eastern Tennessee and northern Alabama to hold them in line. However, 2 ideological factors caused most Southern whites, including those who were not slave owners, to defend slavery. 2 ideological factors, okay? 1 is white supremacy. Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to keep broadcasting for a few more minutes. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for the class I teach on Saturdays from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. All right. Thanks for tuning in today. Remember, right now is correct. Wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you Sunday. Peace. All right, stand by. Okay, who still needs to register for this 10-week online course that I teach? We do the sessions live. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch them over and over again. As soon as you register, you can watch last week's class, and you'll be ready for class this weekend. Hold on. All right. So the class is on sale $70, regularly $130. You can also use this with your children. I would say the content is PG-13. So it's not crazy. I'm not doing a lot of cursing, things like that. Okay. All right, let's continue. Let's go back to this article here. Okay, 5 myths about why the South seceded from the Union. So 2 ideological factors caused most Southern whites, okay, to want to secede from the Union, including those who were not slave owners. Okay. One is to defend slavery. Okay. Two ideological factors caused most Southern whites, including those who were not slave owners, to defend slavery, I should say. First, Americans are wondrous optimists. Americans are wondrous optimists, looking to the upper class and expecting to join it someday. Looking to the upper class and expecting to join the upper class someday. In 1860, many subsistence farmers aspired to become large slave owners. So poor white Southerners supported slavery then. Poor white Southerners supported slavery at this time. Just as many low-income people supported the extension of the George W. Bush's tax cuts for the wealthy, because they hope one day to be wealthy themselves. So they supported, you had poor, low-income people, many of them supported the George Bush tax cuts because they hope one day to be wealthy. Secondly, and more important, the belief in white supremacy provided a rationale for slavery. A belief in white supremacy provided a rationale for slavery. As the French political theorist Montesquieu observed wirily in 1748, quote, "It is impossible for us to suppose these creatures, enslaved Africans, to be men. It is impossible for us to suppose these creatures, enslaved Africans, to be men, because allowing them to be men, a suspicion would follow that we ourselves are not Christians. Because allowing them to be men, recognizing their humanity, recognizing that they are men, and women, recognizing their humanity, recognizing they are human beings, would follow that these really are not Christians doing this, because Christians wouldn't do this to other human beings. So you have to dehumanize them and strip away their humanity to justify mistreating them. You have to put negative pejorative terms on them and call them N-words and darkies and call them all types of dehumanizing terms to strip away their humanity to justify mistreating them, because you knew if you saw them as equals, you would not treat them the same way. You want to absolve your conscience of any guilt. Okay. Dr. Joy DeGruy in Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome calls it cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance. Now, given this belief, okay, of white superiority, white supremacy, okay, and that it's impossible to suppose these creatures to be men, so dehumanizing them, the human Africans. Given this belief, most white Southerners and many Northerners also could not envision life in Black majority states such as South Carolina and Mississippi unless Africans were enslaved. Because in South Carolina, Mississippi, African Americans were the majority population. So they're like, well, wait a second, we're going to turn them loose after we've been mistreating them for decades. We're going to turn them loose. No, that don't sound too good. Most white Southerners and many Northerners also could not envision life in Black majority states such as South Carolina and Mississippi, unless Africans were enslaved, unless they were in chains. Georgia Supreme Court Justice Henry Benning, trying to persuade the Virginia state legislature to leave the Union, predicted race war if slavery was not protected. He predicted a race war if slavery was not protected. He said, quote, the consequence will be that our men will be all exterminated or expelled to wander as vagabonds over a hostile earth. And as for our women, their fate will be too horrible to contemplate even in fancy. Their fate will be too horrible to contemplate even in fancy. Thus, secession, end quote, thus secession from the Union would maintain not only slavery, but the prevailing ideology of white supremacy as well. So not only, and we talked about statements of secession we looked at some statements of secession from the Confederate States, some of the Confederate States early in the week. So not only are we talking about maintaining slavery because it was essential to their way of life and the advantages and privileges that they enjoyed, okay, but also you're looking at crops that are being produced by enslaved Africans that are being sold in stores and that people are eating, consuming. You're looking at clothing that's being produced from cotton. You're looking at there are at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. Okay, so what you're looking at is even how poor white people who didn't own slaves still benefited from slavery. Okay, even poor white people who didn't own slaves still benefited from slavery, even though poor white people were also being exploited by the 1% at the same time, because majority of the people who fought in the Civil War weren't the wealthy plantation owners. It was a lot of poor white people, including in the North. And this is going to lead to, and this is something we deal with in my Saturday class, this is going to lead to the July 1863 New York City draft riots, which go on for about 5 days. There's going to be over 100 African Americans who are going to be killed because the Civil War was not fought to end slavery. The Civil War was fought to bring the South back into the Union. Okay, Lincoln, March 4th, 1861, in Lincoln's inaugural address, he says that he has no intention of ending slavery in states where slavery already exists, because you have about 7 states that have already seceded from the Union. The Civil War is going to start the next month, April 12th, 1861. South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union, December 20th, 1860. So he's trying to stop the flow of Southern states from seceding from the Union because the South was the economic engine of the Union. He's trying to keep the Union together. But after the Battle of Antietam and with the Emancipation Proclamation issued January 1st, 1863, after the initial Emancipation Proclamation was issued September 22nd, 1862, the focus of the war now shifts to freeing the slaves. And this causes backlash from poor white men in the North. There was a draft riot in 1863 in New York. There was also one in Detroit, and there was one in Boston. Because when they institute the draft in the Union, wealthy white men could pay a $300 fine and avoid having to serve in the military. Okay, and they could pay somebody to take their place, or they could pay this $300 fine. Well, that was the $300 was the annual salary, average annual salary back at that time. That's the equivalent to around $5,200 today. So a lot of poor white men could not afford to pay the $300. And they were upset because they're saying, well, wait a second. Now you're talking about freeing the slaves. And many of them were saying, well, okay, so if you free the slaves are going to take our jobs. And they were saying, well, okay, first you said the Civil War was about keeping the Union together. Now you're talking about freeing the slaves. So you have these draft riots that take place in by poor white men in rebellion to the draft. All right. So read this article here from Washington Post. 5 myths about why the South seceded from the Union. 5 myths about why the South seceded. This is a deep, deep history, and we're still dealing with the legacy. We're still dealing with the legacy and the effects of the Civil War, and the Civil War being incorrectly taught, and the failure of Reconstruction, the failure of the Freedmen's Bank in 1874, the whole lost cause movement that taught a revisionist history about the Civil War. We're still dealing with the after effects of that. In the January 6th insurrection was a continuation of the U.S. Civil War, which was an insurrection also. All right, so this is why we have to understand this history and what happened after slavery ended, and the laws and policies put in place as well, because after the Compromise of 1877, which ends Reconstruction, which took place after that took place as a result of the 1876 presidential election, these southern states are going to codify white supremacy in their laws and in their state constitutions, especially to suppress the African American vote, to institute poll taxes and literacy tests, and take back full control of their states in all aspects of life, etc., and institute segregation. And they when you go read their statements at these state conventions where they're rewriting these state constitutions, they talk about they're doing this to exclude the Negro, like in Mississippi with the Mississippi Plan, which became the model that was used by other southern states. And they talk about codifying white supremacy and writing white supremacy into the laws. And this is all a backlash to Reconstruction and advances African Americans were making during Reconstruction. And this is also in retaliation to the North and the federal government. The Mississippi Plan to keep blacks from voting in 1890. We came here to exclude the Negro. We came here to exclude the Negro. And this is what Solomon Saladin Calhoun, who was a White County judge who presided over the Mississippi State Convention of 1890, this is what he said. He said about why they were there. And keep in mind, African Americans are the majority population in 1890. Okay. And after doing Reconstruction, they're the majority population in Mississippi, and they're getting elected into the Mississippi state legislature. And former slaves are now voting on laws that impact their former masters. Quote, he said, let's tell the truth. If it bursts the bottom of the universe, he said, we came here to exclude the Negro. Nothing short of this will answer. And they're going to pass poll taxes and literacy tests to suppress the African-American vote and lock us out of voting, but then also to eventually lock us out of elected office as well. Delegates eventually adopted a literacy test. Delegates at the Mississippi State Convention of 1890 eventually adopted a literacy test and a poll tax geared to suppress the black vote in a state with a black majority. The Mississippi Plan became the model throughout the South, part of a raft of racially oppressive Jim Crow laws that ended Reconstruction. So read this piece here from the Washington Post. And we have never recovered from the failure of Reconstruction, and then what happens after Reconstruction. And this is why, because of what's taking place in the state legislatures in Mississippi and South Carolina, Louisiana, Alabama, this is why you needed the Voting Rights Act in 1965 to counter what was written into their state constitutions. All right. If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show, $ the AHN Show, and also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. African American business owners, post name your business here in the thread of the broadcast. And you can email us at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Also on our website, we have Kanaras for Kwanzaa from Sister Nubia Wartford. So we have that as well at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You'll hear more about that as well. This is our official Cash App account, $ the AHN Show, through Cash App. When you go to it, it has my picture there and it says Michael. These other ones are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. And you can email us at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. africanhistorynetwork.com. A current promotion we have going for, I think we have 1 or 2 more spots left. Buy 1 month, get 2 months free. Buy 1 month, get 2 months free. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win Wakanda forever. And we'll see you in class on Saturday.
On Purpose Television Network. Yes, Black on Purpose Television Network. All black, all positive, all the time. The largest black-owned streaming television network in the world. Bringing our people together worldwide. Controlling our messages, our story, our way. Black TV the way it should be. Black music, Black history, and more. 30+ channels, thousands of shows. Black on Purpose Television Network. Subscribe now.
Gain knowledge in minutes from insightful summaries of progressive and socially conscious books. Blacklisted gives you access to curated content that'll satisfy your curiosity to learn and understand different perspectives. Empower yourself through inspirational and actionable ideas. It's easy to read or listen to on the go. Blacklisted. Empower yourself. Start your free trial today.
All right, we'll talk to you next time. Peace.